begin to construct the trunk from the top section, and we will start with the lid. For creating the lid, you will need several pieces of chipboard which measure as follows. The large part here in the middle is 4.5 by 6 inches. The long elements here are 1 by 6 inch, and the shorter ones are 1 by 4.5. As you can see, I already layered them on paper, on cardstock, black cardstock, for saving some time of the tutorial. And I will explain to you right now what exactly I did. So the cardstock piece that you will need measures 7 3/4 by 9 1/4. And when you layer these, pay attention that you are leaving 1/2 inch border from all the sides. When you glue the chipboard pieces down to cardstock, I would suggest that you use just a scrap piece of the same chipboard that you are working for, and this is for saving the perfect gaps between all the chipboard pieces that you layer on the cardstock. So this is exactly what I did. I also applied some score tape here on the sides, on the 4 sides, and also tiny pieces of score tape here on in the corners, and you will very soon understand why we need those pieces. So when you have all this done, you will need to make some cutting, and the cutting is done in the following way. You will cut here really close to the chipboard itself so that it looks like this. As you can see, the cut is really flush with the chipboard piece that I have. So you do that in all the 4 corners, like this and like this, and this is the 4th one. Okay, now you will need to cut at a straight angle here at the corners too, and pay attention that here I cut at a slight angle. This is how you do it. And one more corner here. Okay, now you remember that we already cut here this flap, so now you need to cut it at an angle in the following way, from the same point where you started and at an angle, like this. So you do it once again in all the 4 corners of the cardstock piece that you have. And since we already created the angled cuts here on the next to the large long sides of the lid, we will do the same on the short sides, like this. Okay, this is the piece that you need to get after all the cutting. Now let's assemble it. One more thing before assembling, and I find it easier to do it this way, I prepared some hinges that I used for making our lid more sturdy, and the hinges measure 1 inch by 6, 2 of them. 2 more measure 1 inch by 4.5, and I also created 4 tiny hinges for the corners, which measure 1 inch by 1 inch. All of these are scored in the middle, and I applied some score tape on the back side. So this is what we have. Let's apply the hinges onto the chipboard piece that we have here, and for doing that I remove the backing from one side of the hinge only, and then I glue it down to the central chipboard piece so that the hinge gets just to the edge of it and it's not overlapping. You still can see the gap between the two pieces. It's very important, so pay attention when you do that. Okay. Great, now we can assemble the lid, and for doing that we will first fold the sides slightly just to make sure that everything is okay, and we can do that. Okay, now we will start from any corner you choose. When you fold the first corner, please pay attention that the top edges here merge into the perfect straight corner. Okay, maybe it's better that you lay this on on top of a straight surface. Then what you do is you remove the backing from that tiny flap of the cardstock, and I like to apply to the remaining area of the flap just a little bit of wet glue. Now I'm ready to assemble. I'm holding two pieces at a straight angle and I fold in the flap. So the score tape piece that we glued down there helps us to establish connection between the two parts at once, and the wet glue ensures that it will really be bonded together really good in the long term. Okay, so you do the same from all the four corners. Okay, now don't glue these down yet, the top flaps. We are still not there. Let's burnish once again on the flaps from the sides. Okay, now what we do is the following. We just remove the tape backing from the hinges at the bottom of our lid, and we connect the hinges to the sides. Okay, now I burnish on the hinges once again to ensure that everything is properly glued down, and move to the tiny hinges for the corners. Here I remove the tape backing from both of the halves and glue it down just there in the corner. Okay, now when this is done, we are truly ready to close the flaps here. And for doing that, you will remove the backing. I like to apply a little bit more glue here on the very top edge of the chipboard, and then to glue it down, I burnished before, and then I press on the cardstock. Okay, the top lid is done. Now we will create the almost the same piece, just slightly we will change the measurements. Okay, how neat and sturdy this piece looks. It's straight, it's reliable, and it looks really, really neat. I hope you succeeded to create this one too. The second part of the top section is created in the very same way as the first one. You will only need to change the measurements for the corner hinges because our second part of the box will be slightly higher than 1 inch, and the measurements are as follows. The central piece is the same, 4.5 by 6. The long sides are 6 by 1 3/4. The short sides are 4.5 by 1 3/4. The score tape is applied in the very same way. So the corner hinges are not 1 inch like previously, but 1 3/4. Okay, and the 4 hinges that you need for the inside of the lid are the same. To measure 4.5 inches by 1, and 2 additional ones measure 6 inches by 1. So I will speed forward the video and I will create the same piece just slightly deeper, and you can watch the process. Oh yeah, the cardstock for layering all these pieces down is 9.25 by 10 3/4 inch. Now let's go. To start creating the base, you will need several pieces of chipboard and a few hinges only to start with. Then we will add more hinges as we go. So the chipboard pieces measure 4.5 by 6. Two pieces which measure 4.5 by 3.5, and one for the back panel which measures 3.5 by 6. At the back side of the panels, I drew a guideline which is 1.5 inch away from the top edge. And now when I will be attaching these to the bottom base, I need to layer them like this. So let's do it. The hinges measure, two of these are 6 by 1 inch, and two of these, the right and left, are 4.5 by 1 inch. I remove the tape backing and layer the chipboard piece on top of the hinge so that it will just meet the score line but will not overlap it, like this, from both long sides. You might want to take your time with that and align everything properly before pressing down and burnishing. The same way of applying the hinge on the side. Like this. And the last one. Okay. Now when this is done, you will do the following. This will be the front of the base of our trunk. So I can already glue down this hinge here so that I know exactly where is the front side. Here. Okay, all the rest of the pieces we will layer now and connect with the help of the hinges so that the narrower part of the chipboard piece will face the top, like this. And how to do that? You remove the tape backing and then you place your chipboard piece at a straight corner, like so, and then you fold the hinge and glue it down. Now we have here a perfect spacing of one thickness of the chipboard that we are using. That means that the same chipboard, one layer, can slide inside, and this is exactly the spacing that we need between those two pieces. So we do this with all the three panels that we have, paying attention that the 1.5 area is facing the top. Okay, now we'll rotate it. Like this. Okay, now before we assemble it like this, I want to attach some hinges that will hold the bottom of one of the compartments of our trunk. And for for that bottom, we need several more hinges. One which will measure 6 inches by 1, scored at 1/2 inch, and I already applied the score tape. So I will remove the tape backing only from 1/2 of that hinge, and I will place it up do the score line here on the back panel of the trunk base, and I will also apply 2 more hinges which measure 4.5 by 1 inch in the same manner, removing only one tape backing from the hinge and applying the hinge just next to the guideline that we drew on the panels. One more to go, like this. Okay. Great. Now let's apply the hinges here on the inner base of the trunk base, and we will need one more hinge measuring 6 inches by 1, scored in half. I will apply it like this. One more from this side, and the last one from this side. Okay, so now the other thing that we need to do is this. We need to apply additional hinges which measure 3.5 inches by 1, scored at 1/2 inch with a score tape. I will apply them to the back panel so that the chipboard piece will get up to the score line but will not overlap it. And I will burnish from the back side. The same here. Now it's done, so let's assemble the base. Remove the backing from the back hinge and form a straight angle between those 2 chipboard pieces. Only then, once you are sure that it's all straight, press and glue the hinge down. Burnish. Do the same from the other side. Like this. And burnish. Okay, now before you put the bottom of that compartment inside, you will need to remove the tape backing from the panels in order to prepare the surface for the bottom compartment, for the bottom of the compartment that we will create here. 2 more hinges which measure 2 inches by 1, scored in the middle with the score tape from the back side. They are intended for these corners here, and before we glue them down in those areas, let's not forget that we have here the backing of the score tape to be removed, and we need to secure the hinges at the bottom of our spacing for the drawer, future spacing for the drawer. So I'm removing the backing and secure the hinges on the side panels. Now when these are glued down and burnished, I can take my two small hinges, remove the tape backing, and place them in the bottom part of this whole piece in the following way. Not up to the end, but only up to this point. And burnish. And the same goes to the second hinge. Okay, this is done. So now you will need to prepare one more piece of chipboard, which measures 4.5 inches by 6, and that will be the inside bottom of our compartment. One more of the compartments that we have. I cut it to 4.5 inches, but as you can see, now I'm layering it inside the construction that I already have, and I can notice that there is a really slight overhanging of this piece, and it stands out from this future front side of our box. So what I will do now, you see, this is the overhanging that I'm talking about. So I will take a craft knife and I will just trim it slightly in order that this piece will fit perfectly to the base. Okay, ready to continue. Before you place it here on top of the hinges that you have, remove the backing. No, slide the long hinge down, okay, and the shorter ones will go on top. How you do it, you remove the backing from the longer hinge, and then you stick down in the corners the shorter hinges to the longer one. This will hold them all together, and it will be easier for us to place now the inside bottom on top of the hinges. Okay, you can slightly start to press down on the hinge from the bottom like this. Okay, and now when you placed it in the area where you want it, you can burnish the hinges down. Okay, like this, to create a better bond. Okay, so this whole construction that we had will go on top of the bottom base like this. And basically what we are doing is the following. The top lid will open, it will be a compartment here, then this whole piece will be able to flip open like this. It will reveal one more compartment here. We will now close it with another panel, and this will form a compartment. And here at the bottom we will have another drawer to put our mini album inside. Okay, so for the front panel here, we will need a piece of chipboard measuring 6 inches by 1.5. But when you layer it, you will also see a slight overhanging from the left and right sides. So we will take care of that in a second. Before doing that, we will measure once again. But before doing that, please make one more hinge, which is 6 inches by 1, and with the score tape applied to it, and place it on this chipboard piece as follows. We start our box to make look nice. Okay, this is how we do it. Burnish on the edge here. Now apply that front panel once again and measure. Now you see that we've added to the thickness of the layer here with our hinge, so the overhanging is even bigger. So we will trim a really tiny strip of chipboard as we did before with the inside bottom of our compartment. It's always good to check before you glue anything down. Let's measure. Okay, just a little bit more. Yeah, just a little bit more. And everything depends on how you layer the pieces and what is the thickness of the chipboard that you use. I've cut my pieces really in the very precise way, but we need to measure all the time. Okay, now it's right. So before we do that, we need some more hinges, hinges, and hinges, all the time hinges. It's all about the hinges. So I have here 2, which are 6 by 1 inch, scored in half, and with score tape on the back side, and 2 more, which measure 4.5, and I will place them here. So the exact same way of doing that, I remove the backing from one side, gluing it down like this. And the same here. Now I can remove the backing from the second half. Okay, so I've applied the hinges, 3 hinges here in these areas, and the 4th hinge I will apply first straight to my front panel. Like this, really flush with the edge, like so. And now we will connect it to the base, to my base box, and I will do it like this. Okay, now we need 4 more hinges, which are 1.5 inch, because this is the height of our compartment, the depth, and they measure 1.5 inch by 1, scored in the middle with the score tape from the back side. Okay. Let's burnish. Great. Now more hinges to cover the top sides of our panels in the following way. Also 2 measuring 6 by 1 inch and 2 more measuring 4.5 by 1. Okay, this is how it looks so far. We need 2 more hinges for the front here, and these will be 3.5 inches by 1. These are the hinges. Okay, I'm not cutting anything right now. I remove the backing from 1/2 of the hinge, and then I measure where exactly I need to glue it down. Here, like this. Now we will need to make a cut. You will feel that the scissors cannot go any further, so make some angled cut like this, and then fold in this flap that you've just cut. Oh yeah, remove the backing. Okay, like this, fold it in, burnish the edge. Now as for this part, you will also cut this little triangle out. Be very gentle while cutting, because you want to cover this area, okay, of the connection between the chipboard pieces, so it will look nice. Okay, do the same from the other side. Okay, now for covering this part, we need just a tiny strip of paper, and we will do something like this. So this strip of paper needs to be 6 inches by even 1/4 of an inch is enough, because you will embellish this panel with the pattern paper, and what you need to do is only to cover the chipboard piece that you have. Okay, like this. So I will apply score tape. and I will attach it in the following way. Like this. Okay, so this is what we created so far. This is how the whole piece will look like. Okay, and the drawer will go inside this compartment. Look at all of the parts that we've created and have so far. It's the top section, which consists of two parts which look pretty much as drawers by themselves. Okay, and we also have the base of our trunk with the compartment here and a place for a sliding drawer here at the bottom. So let's create that drawer. As you can already imagine, the process will be the same as for creating the lids of the top section. And the measurements will change once again. I already pre-cut the chipboard and layered it on cardstock and applied the hinges and the score tape exactly the same way as in the beginning of this tutorial. So the chipboard pieces that you will need are as follows. One large piece in the middle is 4 1/4 by 5 3/4. The long side chipboard pieces are 5 3/4 by 1 3/4. Two of these you will need, and two more measuring 4 1/4 by 1 3/4. The cardstock that you will layer all of this on measures 9 inches by 10 1/2. Okay, the hinges, two will measure 1 inch by 4 1/4, and two more measuring 1 inch by 5 3/4. For the corners, you will need 4 hinges which measure 1 3/4 of an inch by 1 inch, and as you can see, they're scored in the middle and with the score tape on the back side applied. So let's assemble the drawer. Okay, now it's ready. Let's see that it fits inside. And it does. Okay, so now what I would like to do is the front covering panel because I don't want these gaps to show, but the gaps are necessary in order to ensure that the drawer will perfectly fit inside the opening which is intended for it. So let's now measure. I don't have the measurements yet because I don't know them yet. You will do exactly the same. You will measure how big you want your front panel to be. And let's say I don't want it to overhang from the sides or to be standing out here on top. I just want it to be exactly as the opening here, and in my case it's 6 inches by, well, I think that if I will take into consideration the thickness of paper that I will wrap the front panel in, it needs to be 1 7/8 of an inch. So 6 by 1 7/8 of an inch. This is the chipboard piece that I need to cut out now. So here is the piece, 6 by 1 7/8 of an inch, and this is the cardstock that I will use for covering it. It's about 7 inches by 2 7/8. I like to glue down the chipboard pieces to the cardstock using the wet glue, and to the flaps I like to apply the score tape. I'm just layering it somewhere in the middle, gluing it down. Cutting the corners before wrapping it. And now here I like to use score tape. I apply it on the outer edge of the chipboard in this case. So I will start with the long sides. I apply a little bit of glue here just in the close to the edge of the chipboard, and that's to ensure that I will have a great looking outer edge once the cardstock is glued down. Burnish the edges. Okay, now the short flaps. Just like this. Burnish here too. Okay, this is the front panel that I've created for my drawer here. It will look like this. We will glue it down, of course, to the drawer itself, but a little bit later. Now we are ready to apply some metal hinges to connect our top section and the whole top section to the base of the trunk. Hey, why you are not stopping me? What about covering the whole piece with some gorgeous Graphic 45 papers, huh? I will use the Cityscapes collection, and I have some yummy papers here. I will now think and choose which papers I want where, and I will start to cut them to the size of all the sides of the trunk. And in this video I think I will not be explaining what exactly the sizes are, because you can measure and decide what kind of border you want to leave, whether you want a thin border of 1/8 of an inch from all the sides, or maybe even 1/4 of an inch. Anyway, you can do that by yourself, and we will see you once the whole piece will be covered from outside with paper.